The chief exec, Richard Arnold, Manchester United's CEO, set to leave the club by the end of next month. And it comes at the same time, Sky News tell us, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos 25% stake attempt is going to be given the thumbs up and approved. So it's happening. This is moving. Simon, put this into perspective for us. The departure of Arnold, is it significant in the same breath as the arrival of Ratcliffe and his 25%?
Possibly. I mean, Richard Arnold's been asking for this. I mean, he hasn't exactly set the heather on fire, has he? From walking into the business and deciding to meet a group of people in a pub and being recorded, to the manner in which he's handled Mason Greenwood's situation, to the manner in which they bungled the Ronaldo situation, to the commercials around Man United that are beginning to become under pressure because they're not quite getting the same deals as they once did before, irrespective of a team viewer shirt sponsorship. So I think he's asking for it. Now, whether it's a coincidence or whether it is a byproduct of Radcliffe coming in and making some changes and wanting to be more involved, because I don't think the Glazers particularly want to be involved. They don't come to games. They've been very instrumental. What people forget about the Glazers, and I know this sounds like I'm apologising for them, all this money that they've taken out, all of these dividends that they've paid, and all this interest they've paid, you want to have a look at some of the commercial deals that they've done with Man United, because they've accelerated Man United's commerciality through the ceiling.
Yeah.
So there is an element of the Glazers' decision-making process, and the Man United fans will say it's at our expense.
Yeah, but good for the Glazers. They're not part of this. I heard Danny say to you in the commercial
break. But they
break.
are part of it.
Well, I think the question that Danny fired at you is good during the commercial break. Is this Ratcliffe demonstrating that he's going to be the voice in the football side of things?
Well, this has nothing to do with the football side of things. This is the chief executive.
Well, doesn't the chief executive get... I mean, my experience, chief executives get involved in player contracts, get involved in all sorts.
To an extent, yeah.
Simon, you know more than us. It's
that's why I'm speaking to it. The director of football will do the deals. The director of football will introduce the talent, the philosophies and the principles. The chief executive runs the business.
When Frank Armstrong was at Tottenham, Daniel still did the deals.
Well, Daniel signed off the deals, yeah, but the deals were put into front of Daniel to be able to be done. No, of course, Daniel has the final say.
Not when I was talking to them both.
Well, okay, Daniel, that might be the exception that proves a rule, or it might be the exception that doesn't prove a rule.
You might be right on other.
But
I'm saying I'm not sure.
A chief executive of a PLC business is not running the day-to-day football operation decisions.
No,
when it comes to a £50 million transfer, will he be the final signatory? Yes. Right. When it comes to a player getting paid £200,000 a week, will he be the final signatory? Yes.
Yes. So
will he have been in all the minutiae of selecting the player, determining the processes that go involved?
Hopefully
no, of course
not.
he wouldn't.
No,
of course he wouldn't. And not for a business and club the size and scale of Manchester United.
So
I don't think it makes any difference to the football operation. What it might do is you might have if you get a football operator come CEO, he might be more useful in conversations than this fellow was.
Well, what about the fact that Patrick Stewart, the general counsel, will become interim CEO? Will Ratcliffe have a big say in who's going to succeed Arnold?
Well, again, it depends upon the nature of the shareholder agreement they put in place. We had this discussion yesterday. The idea that 25% of ownership of a business subsequently trumps the 50% owners is ridiculous. Right? They've got 70%. The 25% that Radcliffe is buying will either be a new issue, which dilutes everybody down, but they will still be the predominant shareholders. They will still have at least 50%, which means they will still predominantly call the shots.
So who's made the decision that Richard Arnold goes?
Who knows? Maybe Richard Arnold himself. I don't know, but the bottom line is, do we think he should be going? Has he covered himself in any particular glory? Is this a surprise?
Well, is it a loss?
Not to me.
Is it a loss to the football club?
No, I don't think. I mean, if you look at the whole litany of the things I just laid out in 30 seconds about instances that we know of, I mean,
that one you mentioned, when he met disgruntled fans in a pub to address concerns about the future of the football club, eyebrows were raised then. This was in June 2022, June last year, and he met a group of fans. I don't think he knew he was being recorded, and then the whole thing went out on social media.
We spent £1 billion on players over the last 10 years. We spent more than anyone in Europe. But I believe, I'm not thrilled where we are, right? It doesn't sit easy. I worry, right, we've got to get this sorted for the future. But what's happened is we've earned through cash on. You can't go to our training ground and say, by the way, show me where that £1 billion is in, because I don't think we've done well with the money we've spent historically. Yeah. But I'm not here to defend Joel or the Shells. He must speak for himself, right? I wanted to talk to you. You've taken the time and energy to come here to make your views known. I respect that. That we've blown through an enormous amount of money. For this summer, the money that the manager and the director of football wants is there, right? For the future, for investing in new stadium and that sort of stuff, to do a latest and greatest £250 million training ground, okay, we've got to do something. We've got to get investors in. And again, I need that to do what I want for the club.
What do you make of that when you hear it back?
What do I make of it? There's nothing wrong with what he's saying to some extent, and nothing wrong with his intentions. There's everything wrong with the fact that he's the chief executive of Manchester United, and you can't have little meetings in boozers with football fans.
No, but let's give him... In isolation, that particular thing isn't why he's lost his job.
But that's not,
and actually, he was in fear, probably.
It's about judgment, Danny. It's not about the individual mistakes. It's about the judgment that you deploy that either decries or announces the fact that you're fit for purpose.
Yeah,
if you can't manage that situation, you can't manage Ronaldo. I know it's a trouble, but this is the job. You're the chief executive of Manchester United Football Club, so you need to have the skill set to be able to operate and the judgment to be able to make the right calls. How do you handle Mason Greenwood? You handle it the way he handles it. How do you handle your social media guys? Allow them to put out briefings where they tell people we construct our social media around the trends of what people want to hear rather than what our players need to say. The commerciality of the whole kit and caboodle. I'm not surprised if Glazer's coming in with 25% that he says to the Glazers, there's certain things I can help improve for the benefit of all of us, and I'm going to be focused here more often. And even Radcliffe has said himself, I don't intend to base myself in this country. I'm based abroad. Yeah, and I'm going to be. And if there's an element of more diligence, the Glazers do not care about the day-to-day running of Manchester United. They care about the day-to-day outcomes of Man United that inflates their share price or gives them an opportunity to pay bigger dividends. That's their process, and people need to get over it because that's what it is.
So it brings it back to this. They don't really care then, according to you, who's doing what at the football club as long as it's being done. So in other words, this has got Ratcliffe's fingerprints all over it. The fact that Arnold's heading to the exit door.
Absolutely. They do care because the outcomes ultimately affect them. Right, but do they care enough and are they focused enough to be able to make sure that the devil is in the detail? It's not a case of not appointing people that should be fit for purpose. It's ensuring that the standards that you expect from them are operating at the highest level. You've got to distinguish between the two things. One is a football operation, another is a business. Right, and the football operation, whilst is the core product, needs to be run by people that understand the principles of it. So I don't think the Glazers go out of their way to employ people that aren't capable of doing a job.
No.
And don't care about the outcomes, because in the end, if nothing else, they're mercenary. It's going to affect them in the longer game.
So nobody woke up in the Glazer household this morning and thought, I tell you what we're going to do, Richard Arnold's gone. It's not them.
It may well be as a result of a series of conversations between Radcliffe and the Glazers to say, maybe we need to shake this up a little bit. Maybe we need better people in place. Or maybe Richard Arnold saw the signs, doesn't particularly want to work with Jim Radcliffe, and has jumped before he's pushed.
Just before we get to the debate, did you ever think Richard Arnold was best in class?
I didn't know nothing about him. What in terms of his commercial experiences? Well, I can tell you who was best in class in one aspect was Woodward. Not in football operations, but go look at the deals that fella did. Go look at the structuring. Irrespective of the hate campaign that's been levied against the Glazers, if you could buy a football club like Man United with none of your own money out of it and make a fortune out of it and get a guy to come in and restructure and re-engineer and raise commercial deals that you've never seen the like of, Woodward was best in class in that respect. What he was worst in class at was identifying who could run the football operation and do it properly.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.